What's up, guys? Welcome back to another perspective video. This is part 2 of our last video in the series. So if you didn't see that, I would go check that out. Today we are going to be continuing the drawing from last week. So as you can see, we kind of just have like a blank city right now. We kind of just have some blocks and something that looks like a city essentially. And these were my references that I was looking at. Can't turn these guys on. Don't know why it keeps asking me that guy. Here I go up there. Okay. So these are my references I was looking at. And if you guys remember, this was the one that I was really basing my picture off of. I really like that foreground element where we have maybe not the person for this picture in particular, but like this really big light post, the building in the background. I like that whole sense of space and depth, and it really kind of helps push the perspective, which is overall is what we're trying to achieve here, right? Otherwise, I was looking at these other references for inspiration, but I didn't get to everything, right? I didn't get this bridge that I kind of really liked, but I can always save that for another time. But I did end up getting this building in here, or my version of this building. And so now we're going to come in and add some windows and make this a little more realistic. So, if my picture doesn't want to keep bouncing around. Okay, so what I'm looking for at now is mainly this building here, and I really like the way the windows line up. So we're going to go for that. I'm going to turn these references off, but I can leave that one on top on because that's the one I want to be thinking about. And I also went in and I tightened up my picture a little bit, so that way you guys didn't have to sit there and watch me tighten it up. So I just kind of crisped up the lines here. So let me turn off this fuzzy one. And there you go. So we're looking at something just a little more crisp that I just thought looked a little better. But realistically, I just went over this with a dark, sharper line. If you were doing something with pencil, this is where you would go over with some ink. I wouldn't go over with ink just yet if you're doing traditional, because there might be things that you still want to erase. We're not done with this picture yet, right? So let's go ahead and jump in. I can show you guys what we're going to do. If I turn these layers on here, is we're going to turn our city into something like this. And even... Okay, so this is what our end goal for this picture is going to look like. Okay, we're going to draw this together, and we'll figure it out. All right, so first things first, let's go ahead and get those windows in that building, right? So I'm looking at this section right here. And I want to do a couple sections of windows. So what I have to do, guys, is I have to come in and draw my X's to find the center point, right? We've talked about that a few times. It's tedious, it's annoying, but it's the only thing that helps us find that center line when we're drawing in perspective. Okay, so same process as it always is, corner to corner. Corner. There we go. Just gonna move that layer down there. All right, and then I'm gonna go to my other corner and we're gonna create that X. And then where those 2 points intersect is where our center line is, right? I'll do a different color for the center line. In fact, you know what? I can actually do my drawing color here. Make sure I'm on the right layer. I'm going to draw my line in here. Make sure I don't go over my street post, which is in front of my building, right? Overlapping shapes. And now I need to find the center of this and the center of this rectangle. Okay, so now we're going to come in again and we are going to use a different color so we don't get too confused. And we're going to create 2 more X's. Okay, we're going to come here and we're going to go corner to corner here. All right, let's do it on my other side too. All right, so now I have 2 more X's. And now I'm going to go down the middle of both of those with my correct color. Oh, clicking things too many times. There we go. All right, somewhere down the center there. Now I'm going to keep dividing this because if you look at the reference that I'm looking at, it has a lot of vertical windows going down. So we might as well go ahead and copy that. And then we can copy those really thick panels that are going left to right in the image. What I'm going to do though, to cheat this a little bit, is now that we have this, I'm just going to come in and I'm going to kind of guess where I want my, so I'm going to go in and just kind of guesstimate my halves from this point. So that way you don't have to keep drawing these X's and it doesn't get overwhelmingly confusing. So we can turn that off. And I'm gonna do a little line, just to kind of figure out if that's where I want my half to be. If you want this to be perfect, remember that the halfway point is not going to be in the exact center because it's in perspective, right? So the one that's closest to you, the window that's closest to you, will be bigger. That's pretty good, but I think I can even go in there one more time and add in another section, because why not? We can just keep going until you're happy with it, and I'm not happy with it quite yet. If you like it on your picture though, you can definitely keep where you're at. Okay. So going real quick, draw my lines down. All right. Cool. So now we have some vertical windows going down there, or beams that look like they're inside the building. So now let's get those floor separations, right? And so this, I kind of want it to be only 4 floors, I would say. At least 4 more above where it goes over the ground there. So again, we have to pull up our X and we can use the same one that we had. So if you can still see the marks or you haven't erased it yet, that's a good thing. We need it. Cut through the center of our red one. Okay, so don't get confused by those blue ones. We're looking at the red one. Right there. And I'm going to make it nice and bold. So I'm pressing pretty hard. For you guys, it might be maybe just waiting until you have your outline pen to make it darker or whatever you want to do. Maybe use a marker for this. Okay. So I have that. And now I can go ahead and split that in half. So now I need to find my X's again for the top floor and the bottom floors. So let's try not to get confused here. I'm going to use green. So remember, if you're drawing this traditionally and you're drawing these X's and stuff, make sure you're using a very light pencil, very light hand. It should be erasable, because at the end of the day, you don't want all this color and X's and stuff going through there. If you are drawing with a blue photo or what do they call, like non-photo pencil, then that's fine. If you photocopy it after, it'll take the blue lines out, so that should actually work for you too. Okay. Now I go back to my dark color. And if you can see it, I'm looking for the center of those green X's. It's getting a little lost in the color there, but I can see it pretty good. And I'm matching it up with my vanishing point over here. And again, I'm going to go pretty bold, but I'm also going to take note of where my street sign is there, my street light or traffic light. Right. And I want this to bump a little off the edge just to give it like a rim. Okay, something like that. Gives a little extra interest. Find the second X. Boom, cross it right through the center. Same thing. Nice bold line. All the way through. Nothing is crossing over this one, so should be good. And there we go. We have our 4 floors. And let's take off these jawbreaker colors. And there we go. Okay. So now on the other side, what I actually want to do is I'm looking more for this left side of the building. I really like this, how these windows are separated with this nice big gap here. And I think I'm only going to do 2 windows like that. Okay, so what I'm going to do first, whoops, that's not what I want to do. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to make a rectangle shape in which I want these windows to fit. So we're going back to my colors here. So I'll go back to red, pull out my ruler. I'm going to choose vertically where I want these windows to fit in between. I think I like here. Now I might not keep that length, but I just want to make sure I had that length in there. And so now I'm deciding, I'm going back to the vanishing point on the left, and I am deciding how low from the ceiling or the top of this building I want it to be. And I also want to make sure I'm not creating a tangent with that street light. So right about there looks good to me. That way I can go here, and then it'll just cut through the street light. Okay. And I only lose a little bit of the corner up there in my cropping zone. Oh my gosh, my big hands keep putting marks everywhere. Okay. And so now, how much do I want it to come off from the ground? Okay. So these are just guidelines. These aren't what are staying. One thing we do have to do is we do have to find our X again. And now I know the center, right? So I can choose to cut through that X. But remember, there's a space in between these buildings. So this is my, or these buildings, these windows. So this is my center, but I don't want my windows to be there on the center because then they're touching. I want that concrete separation like I see in my reference image. So I don't have to go in and drawing a million more X's. What I can actually do is another trick where I'm going to keep this ruler on the vanishing point, lift up the right side a little bit, decide how high I want that window from the center line. Doesn't really matter. This is kind of your personal preference. I'm just going to try to keep it off from touching the street light. And I'm going to go ahead and draw that guy in there. Now, the trick here to how we can find where that bottom window would be in proper perspective. Again, you can put it wherever you technically want to, but if you want to put it in proper perspective where the 2 windows would be about the same size, I'm going back down to my guidelines layer. I'm finding where the first window, the top window, crosses with that X, and I'm going to bring a line down to the other X, right there where they intersect. You could do that on this side, or you can do it on this side. Either way, it's going to give you about the same result. Okay, your preference there. You only need to do one of the lines, so I'll get rid of one so it's not confusing. And now if I just draw a line through where that's intersecting, or where, maybe not intersecting, but where that blue line meets the red line. Okay, so come into here like so, and then draw across. I now have my gap in the middle there, and it's perfectly in perspective. So while my guidelines are up, I'll just go ahead in and draw in the rest of the window. And there we go. We have our window, right? Or 2 windows, to be precise. just like that. Now, if I do want to give them like a window sill or like a window pane kind of look, where you can see that they're separated here. But if you see, the middle one is bigger than the two on the right. A little off center, right? So what I can do for this is if I just leave my X up like that, I can go back to my blue, find the center really quick. The center isn't going to be something I draw over, but I do need to know where my center is, just for a point of reference. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose just mentally where I want that first window side to be. So I'm going to come over here. And one thing I'm making a mental note of too is if you guys can see, this window in comparative to size is much smaller than this window, but that's the perspective playing the illusion, right? They're actually the same size if I were to walk over to this building and look at it straight on. But that's what's giving the illusion of perspective and depth. Okay, so that's why that window looks smaller than the other. So when I'm going to come over here and think about maybe cutting this side in half, I have to think about that in my head, where I can't just cut this in half exactly and then this window is the same size as this window, right? Because that's not going to follow the rule of perspective that we're setting. This side has to be larger than this side. Okay, and I'm not trying to follow any really hard halfway guidelines because I'm kind of trying to make my own window idea here. So let's see. I think that's good right there. Oops, look at that. I almost drew my guideline. Okay, so here and here. And now I need to find my other one, right? So all I have to do, again, is use where it crosses over in the X. Don't have to go drawing another X. I really don't. I want to do as little work as possible to find these things, right? So I don't want to go drawing another X. All I have to do is go from vanishing point to right here, where that window sill crosses in the front of the X. Can draw it over. It meets with that other side. And then that's where my line goes. Now, if I get rid of my colors here again, there we go. We have our window in perspective. Okay. The last thing this building really needs is a door. We got to be able to get in somehow. You guys probably already have the answer of how I'm going to do this. If you don't, I'm about to shock you, blow your mind, but we're about to come in here and create another X. I need to know where the center of this rectangle is. And again, the only way to do that, unfortunately, is to find the X. And right down there, the center is the center of my door. Now, just for whatever reason, I'm going to make this door a sliding door that you might see at like a grocery store. So what I want the center to be, because it's mainly going to be glass and it's not going to be the structural part of the doors, I'm going to make it a lighter gray, just so it doesn't seem like my prominent primary kind of color that I'm drawing with. So I'm going to come in here and just make it a nice light gray. And now we get to use our X trick again, where I don't have to draw a million other X's. I'm going to find this other side of the door. And I'm going to say maybe like right there's, like right there's good. We're going to draw it up somewhere there. And now, if you guys remember, the trick is, sorry, just switching my colors here real quick. Okay. If you guys remember the trick, take the ruler down. So remember, everything is going to the right vanishing point on this side. Okay, so I always got to have my right vanishing point in sight. Line it up with that X part where it intersects. And then this is going to tell me where that door is going to cross down into, right? That's my other side of my door in perspective. Pretty simple. So now I can kind of come in and find my door by giving myself that vertical line first. Zoom in here so we can see it. Somewhere up there. Okay. Get my vanishing point in sight. I have to line it up one more time. And right underneath that building's top, we give ourselves the top of our door. Just like that. A few more things to get done in this picture. What we have left here is we have that building in the background. And then we can also throw a crosswalk in here. And then that's probably about it for how much detail I'm going to add to this picture. Because I don't want to overwhelm it, overdo it. But all I'm going to do for this building on the left side is I'm just going to put some vertical lines going down, some vertical windows, because this building is off a little bit to the distance. I want this building that's right, it's smack in the center of my page to be the focal point. So I don't need this other building to be hyper detailed in any way, really, at all. So give myself another guideline layer. Grab my guideline colors, line it up with the vanishing point there. It doesn't matter where. All I'm trying to do is give myself a square here to work with, because we gotta find ourselves an X. Okay, there we go. So we have an X, right? So this gives me the middle of my building here, which if I'm just going to do a bunch of vertical lines down, I need to know the middle, and then I can find all my other lines. Okay, middle is going to be somewhere there. Now I need to think about where I want my other lines to fall in perspective. And because, again, this is going to be a building that's behind the building that I care about, I am just going to give it a guess here. Okay, what I mean by that is I'm going to just kind of eyeball the halfway points here using the logic that we already know, right? Where this side is smaller, this side is bigger. So if I come in here and I just try to half this doesn't work, right? Because now this side is the same as this side in terms of sizes. So that doesn't follow the perspective that we're telling. But it doesn't need to be hyper realistic. I don't want to come in here and draw a bunch of X's. If you guys do, go for it. I personally don't. I want to be a little lazy here. So I'm just going to cut it in half with the knowledge that this side needs to be smaller than this side. And to me, that looks good enough. Same over here. That looks pretty good to me. And now I'm going to cut those ones in half, and then that'll be the end of that. So what I'm going to do is cut that in half. Yep, looks good. That could be a little bigger. I think that'll work. This one in half. Come on, red line. Yep, and then a little too much, but somewhere around there is good. Come on. That'll be good. Okay. So these are just my halfway markings. Now I'm going to come in with my actual color, because I don't want to do everything twice, right? I want to just kind of get where I need to see it in, and then just draw it. So one thing I will do, because this is a building in the back, I'm going to choose a lighter gray. I don't want this to be as prominent as the building in front of it. And I'm just going to go ahead and draw this in. So this one I only see, whoa, made that a little too thick there. Undo that big guy. So I'm just going to, this one I only see a little bit because the other side of it's going behind our street light there, our traffic light. I can choose whichever side I want to draw from here. I want to draw this guy. I'm trying to keep these lines nice and light too. Light, small, thin, because again, this building's in the background, so I don't want anything about it to be reading as like large, because all of that size registers as closeness in a picture when you're doing perspective. So we don't want to give that a feeling of being close to something if it's supposed to be far away from us, right? Turn off my bright reds there. And there we go. We have some windows going down. And I'm going to leave the other side of the building blank there. Only other thing I want to accomplish here is a crosswalk. So I'm actually going to turn this layer back on. Ooh, just turn on. That's all I want from you. All right. And then now we're going to go ahead and give myself a guideline down here where I'm going to use that red again. I need to see my right side vanishing point. And I'm going to decide how far away I want this crosswalk to be painted from the curb there. Okay. I think that's pretty good. So I'm just going to do a line here. If you guys wanted to do a crosswalk on the other side of the street, you could do that as well. All right, so you can give yourself another guideline there. Completely up to you. And now I'm just going to decide where I want the length of that to be. So I'm actually just going to go back to my normal color. Again, I'm going to go back to that lighter gray because this is a crosswalk. I don't necessarily want it to be dark and prominent in my picture. You know, I don't know how many pictures I've seen where the crosswalk is the center point, but hey, who am I to judge? Right. And I'm going to draw this line going all the way over and behind this curb, because this curb, it's also elevated off the ground like the curb to the left, right? But because we're standing on top of it or on it, we can't see where that curb dips down. But the fact that the crosswalk is going behind it and the curb is overlapping it, that gives us again that illusion of depth, and that this sidewalk is overlapping it, therefore there is a step there, right? Just another trick in the toolbox. I'm going to decide how thick I want my crosswalk to be, my crosswalk line, I should say, to be here. All right, and then of course the crosswalk has two sides. So now I got to decide where I want that other one to be, how thick I want it to be. And remember, this is closest to you, so I do want this one to be thicker. I actually probably could have gone without even drawing that side, and it would have been just as realistic too. So now we can come in. Don't forget to draw the top part of it. It's only in red right now. Got to draw it in gray. There we go. And for the heck of it, let's draw this side too. Why not? We already have it here. Okay, so I can't see the sidewalk on the other end of this one because the light pole that's right here in the right side of my picture is covering it. So again, this one's just going to go all the way over. And remember, I want this crosswalk to seem super teeny tiny in comparison to the one that's closest to us, especially compared to how the size of that building, because you got to think, if that's the size that I chose for the door of the building, that means that people are even smaller than that, right? So we got to go real small over here. Barely above it kind of line. Something like that. Okay. And of course, if you decide that you want these to be bigger, you can always go in and make them bigger. But for me, I like this. All right, so the one thing we're missing is back here, I wanted this to be like a forest or a park, right? So if we look at my original drawing, somewhere down here, okay, like I had those tree structures in there, right? So what we're gonna do is while I have this layer open, I'm going to drop this opacity down. Oops. We're going to go back up to my drawing. And we're going to draw these trees in a little sharper, but I'm actually going to stick to my light gray here because I don't want these trees to be the prominent picture either. Maybe I'll make it a little darker than the crosswalk, but for the most part, these trees aren't the focal point of what I'm trying to show. But this is where you can kind of come in and add some detail if you want, whatever kind of you want to show with your trees. Don't go overly detailed would be my only suggestion, just because, again, the trees are not the focal point necessarily. They could be in a different picture though. And then back here, I really just want maybe some more lines of like where, you might see some of that. You might see some bottom here. I might have just a bushy top on there. Okay, but for the most part, what you would do is really come in here and just add a tone, because this isn't necessarily where you're going to focus your detail. So I would honestly, oops, that's a little too dark. Come in here, I'm going to grab a little bit of a lighter gray. And just kind of add a tone over these, because the tone's going to give it a feeling of thickness, like there's more trees back there than there really is, right? Or at least more trees than I want to draw. Okay. So now I have a dense forest that just suddenly appeared, and you can go in and make certain areas darker, like that. And then the only other thing that I would say that would make this picture really stand out is if we kind of played with the idea of shadow shapes, right? So I'm talking about something like this, where that really just kind of forces that depth and understanding of 3D shapes into our picture. And it's really simple to do. All I did was choose which side I wanted to be in shadow, and I made it in shadow. And you can play with this in color too, but just for the sake of showing you guys what I did here, whoops, keep that up. Let me close my other layer there. Okay. Now for you guys, you'd be using your pencil, obviously. I'm using a digital tool. So I have something that's a little helpful for me in terms of staying inside my lines, which is my lasso tool. And so I'm just going to go ahead in here and make a selection. So now I just easily, for me, come in and fill it with my gray. Just like so. So now all those buildings are in shadow. Okay. What you would have too is a couple things where we're going to be thinking now, the underneath part of this building would definitely not be in the light, right? Because it's overhanging. Okay. So we can come in and fill that. I'm actually going to put a slightly darker color in there. Fill it in. Okay. And then even a building underneath would be in shadow too, right? What I can actually do is maybe even do a little bit of an angled shadow. Grab a bit lighter here in terms of a gray. Come on, place it in. There you go. So anyways, what I can do too while I have that is, because this is on the ground level, it's reacting with some of the sunlight, it would also be getting hit with a little bit of reflective light. So I can come into my eraser tool, choose something a little fuzzy. I got a soft round here, and I can remember, so here I can come in here and kind of knock in some window shine if I wanted to, right? Say those are glass. I know up here, maybe it won't be so light, or it will be getting hit with a little more light up here. Just lighten it up a little bit in comparison to what everything else has. Okay. The same thing would be happening for, you know, up here. This would be getting hit with a little bit of bounce light. All right, I can come in, and if I really shrink this down, I can come in here and add in a little bit of a rim light on this one. Okay. I can fix this guy. Oops. Okay, bring that guy back in front. And then the coolest thing is we can use our perspective points to create the cast shadow, because these are huge buildings in space, right? So they're going to be putting down a shadow on the ground. So one of the easiest ways to do that, and this also depends on the time of day, but just for sake of simplicity here, we are going to just have the corner of this building follow in line with where my vanishing point is. Looks like I go a little higher than that. Somewhere along here. I like the way it looked before. Let's go for dramatic. Over here. Right. And then suddenly, if I choose a nice dark gray, that's probably a little darker than I would actually choose, but just to show you. It's casting a nice shadow down, right? Over our picture. And you can always come back in and fix things if you don't want certain things to be in the shadow. Maybe you want the sidewalk to appear a little lighter than the road. You know, remember your road would have a tone. All this stuff, right? So you can come in and just infinitely play with this. Shadow shapes, all this stuff. It just kind of adds to that grand 3D perspective picture that you're trying to tell, right? The story that you're trying to tell. Cool. All right, guys, this is as far as I'm going to take this one. Obviously, we can take it much farther. I'd love to see if you guys do take this much farther, or you do your own and you take it to the next level, maybe even use a little bit of color. So if you got that, please show that off to me, and I will talk to you guys next time when we're doing 3-point perspective. Cool? Have a good one, guys.